Welcome to Cody in the Cinema. Today I'm discussing John Cassavetes' 5 films. I'm ranking them in a way that makes sense to me, but folks, all 5 of these are tremendous films, and very little in life gives me as much pleasure as talking to you about great directors and great films and the rich history of cinema in this medium that I love so much. Sean Baker, if you have not heard of Sean Baker, he did a little bit of independent film work. He's done a little bit of that. He did this film called Nora. Maybe Best Picture you've heard of. And he called this director, John Cassavetes, he called him the godfather of American independent cinema. And I first heard about John Cassavetes, first experienced him as an actor in this film. Don't love this cover, but Rosemary's Baby. I mean, the first time, this was my first kind of non-traditional horror movie, and I just, other than I didn't love the ending at first, but I mean, just what am I even looking at? These beautiful, scary images in this style of filmmaking, and eventually I did really get into Cassavetes, and so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about my preferences, my observations, and this top 5 more than anything else, like I said, is just a celebration of a strong director who did so much for movies and movie history. I am going to put my number 5 as his first film out of this set, called Shadows. Okay? And if you buy the Criterion, you get, they're kind of small little, they're not super sturdy or anything like that, small little packages here, but this is his directorial debut. And the essential story, and you can kind of look into how some of this came about, the improv and so forth, but the basic story is that this young woman who has a few brothers, she's light-skinned, and she has a brother, for example, who has a very dark-skinned black man, and she eventually meets this other man who ends up kind of bothered by the fact that her brother has a darker skin complexion than her. And that's part of the film. Part of the film is this guy in the family who wants to be a jazz trumpeter, but he's kind of meandering all over the place with drinking and so forth, picking up girls. There's a lot of banter, which is a trademark staple of Cassavetes. I mean, Peter Falk talked about how, the French New Wave even, guys like, Jean-Luc Godard? I mean, they took from that, right? They were smitten by Cassavetes. And just this very naturalistic dialogue. That's a whole lot of the movie. And it isn't that fully developed, mature Cassavetes that you see over time. But there's definitely a lot to like. I really, really enjoyed Hugh Hurd and his dynamic in the family and how he interacts with his sister and others. And I think that there are just these wonderful kind of sometimes self-deprecating conversations about art. And it is a smart, fun, fantastic movie, and I think it might have been on Jonathan Rosenbaum's top 100 alternate list or something. He talked about that. Critic talked about the film, but like I said, it's not, it is 80 some minutes, and it is shorter than some of his other pictures, and that might be like a blessing for some folks. In fact, I could see someone saying this is the only Cassavetes I could make it through, because of the length of some of the other films. But for me, it does claim that number 5 spot out of the 5 films pack. So I am very specifically talking about the 5 films pack. It's not even that expensive if you get it on sale, half off. So Shadows, number 5. Number 4 I just watched, and this was this one I thought might be my number 2, but the last 20 minutes or so didn't capture my attention the way the rest of the film did, so I went a little lower on it, but I really enjoyed the film. All right, this is called Faces. Faces. And the main actor of Faces, John Marley, you might recognize him if you watch the film, because he was the horse guy in The Godfather. That scene, that was that actor. And I didn't know, I was looking and researching about the films, and I was like, oh yeah, I recognize him, and it was really exciting. And he's in this kind of a troubled relationship with his wife. I think the best films with John Marley, Lynn Carlin, his wife, I think those scenes have the most to offer in the film. They are absolutely perfectly acted and just engaging, and they can, the sort of yo-yo effect that happens in relationships when the happy to sad real quick kind of dynamic, the passion, that is like perfect Cassavetes for me. Sometimes these guys, he ends up chasing Jenna Rollins, who's a young woman, and these other guys are, trying to woo her as well sometimes, and there's like a lot of gusto and bravado and kind of slimy immaturity, and there's so much insecurity in the film. It's not just the men. The wife is insecure. These are people who haven't ever fully grown up in a way and haven't really examined their own lives fully and lived them fully. And I think it's a real fascinating film in that way. It's the kind of thing that sometimes, mainstream cinema ignores. And if you listen to interviews and snippets about that, people will say, like, this is a story, sometimes it gets ignored by Hollywood or whatever. Interestingly enough, Jenna Rollins is, like, no doubt about it, one of the best actresses ever. And I think if anyone else had been the part that she is as this, like, possible would-be mistress, I think that character would have been way more forgettable in the film. But she's just, like, that dynamic, in the film, that I think she made that character better than what was maybe written or improvised or however that worked out. But again, still a film I really highly recommend seeing. Most of it landed, like, perfectly for me. It just didn't all land. So that was my number 4 pick, Faces. Real nice film. Real nice film. Okay. Now, number 3. Number 3 is a film I think really needs to be in the conversation of gangster classics. Like I just talked about The Godfather. Why isn't more often the killing of a Chinese bookie in these conversations? This is a great gangster film. There's just a lot of talking, and it isn't head to toe with gangster stuff. Maybe that's why. I don't know. Bing Gazzara, who I recently discussed him in I did a review of Anatomy of a Murder. He was the jailed husband in that film, great in that film. This is a real good performance from him, a really interesting, unique character. And I don't use the word unique lightly. I just don't find a lot of characters like what Bing Gazzara played as Cosmo. And he's running this, let's call it a strip club, a glorified strip club, or an adult entertainment club, however you want to say it. And it's part of what's so interesting about him is he's trying to sort of bring an art to the thing. He's trying to make these performances in these shows be something like a Shakespeare play in a way, something more substantial, even if that doesn't always work out. And I think that's interesting in and of itself. He also has a huge gambling problem. So you think about the Scorsese film Casino and how that kind of thing gets dealt with. As a result of this, you learn very early on that he's going to have to be involved in the killing of a Chinese bookie. And the way that goes down, and the shooting and who does it and how they do it and who done it and how they got away and all that, really riveting, terrific, engaging, thoughtful filmmaking from Cassavetes. And I think that sequence is as good as anything in the gangster genre. I really enjoyed it. And I do like anything that involves a casino in any way or gambling. I love that in films. I'm obviously a huge fan of Scorsese and the gangster genre. I think that's great. And some of his speeches and moments, this is just a top-tier performance from Bing Gazzara. A gentleman's club owner, as it says on the back of here, desperately committed to maintaining a facade of suave gentility despite the seediness of his environment and unhealthy appetites. I mean, it's a compelling character. It's a great character study. It's a little long. And the first, exposition, 20, 30, 40 minutes, it's going to be slow for some folks. It was for me, but it didn't take much away from the film. I really enjoyed it. Really, really enjoyed it. So that's my number 3 pick. And I almost didn't have this at number 2 because I didn't like this as much as I do now, looking back at it. This went from a film that I enjoyed to a film that I quite enjoyed, and it's kind of a lot to take in. It's a difficult film. This is called Opening Night, Cassavetes' Opening Night, and what a cast! So this, not only is this a Cassavetes, directed film, but he acts in it. He's an actor. He's a play within a play. He's in the play that he's working on with Jenna Rollins' character, who's also in the play, Myrtle Gordon. They're working on a play together. There's some other big names. Ben Gazzara is in it again, and he plays an important role. But really, I love Joan Blondell in it, of all people. Similar to how, what's her name? Ann Miller in Mulholland Drive. How David Lynch incorporated that classic Hollywood actress. It's not the same thing, but I just love when directors do that. They incorporate someone from the past and they really bring that person to life. She's sort of bringing her script to Jenna, and Jenna's struggling with it on stage. Jenna's struggling with alcoholism, like really badly. And there's some trauma at the beginning, a really well done sequence where a fan is involved in an accident, and Jenna Rollins, this alcoholic, sees it, and then that spirals the alcoholism, and then there are like hallucinations and all these different things. And it does become a great character study from her, and only this actress could have done this role this way. She is so entrancing, Jenna Rollins is in this film. I when I went back and was trying to see what other people thought about it, the Letterboxd D, if you follow that, the social media app, I mean, great reviews, great insights, really funny. You have to see and read. Sometimes the Letterboxd reviews aren't that great, or they're just like joke reviews, but this is like the perfect set of Letterboxd reviews. You gotta go like to the top, and see what some people came up with. And there's so much good stuff about like aging and how age plays a role in our lives and our own perceptions of ourselves. The use of color, I mean, film's a visual medium, right? It is a chance for us to experience beautiful, stunning visuals, and the use of red, like so when they're working on stage, you see some of this red in this sort of bare bones apartment that is the stage, and then you go to her house or her apartment, and it's like also uses the red, and there's like lots of open space, and it builds that isolation. I love what Cassavetes did there visually. There are some great shots of her dressing room. They're also really pretty. It is a nice, well-made film. My number 2, Opening Night. And Joan Blondell being in that, man, she was awesome in that film. Really good performance. But one of the greatest films ever made. And my number 1 on this list. This probably isn't a surprise to anyone who's been through all 5 of these films. My number 1 in the John Cassavetes set is A Woman Under the Influence. A total, flawless, uncompromising, difficult, stunning masterpiece with my pick for the best performance anyone has ever given in a motion picture. And sometimes I find some that I think might be close, but nobody can quite do what Jenna Rollins did playing Mabel in this film. She's desperate. She's lonely. She has some kind of mental issues. We don't know what they are, some kind of troubles. And she's married to this guy played by Peter Falk. All right. And he's just this the city construction worker. And he starts realizing throughout the film that, at first he says, Mabel's not crazy. She's unusual. But he starts to realize that even though he's attracted to her and he kind of understands how to interact with that part of her personality, that it's becoming dangerous. And so there are parts of the film that deal with the consequences of her mental health, and it can be really tough to watch. And it probably, like if you've ever had anyone in your life who's had a mental health crisis, it's going to hit you extra hard. The studios and different people weren't as interested in this film, so Cassavetes, I think he put a mortgage on it, something with his mortgage in his house. I forgot exactly what it was, but he had to do something with that. And Peter Falk, I think, put up like $500,000 on the film. I can't remember all the details, but they financed it. They knew they had something here, because who does want to watch a middle-aged woman going crazy, so to speak? And what they came up with was one of the all-time great films. Peter Falk, just kind of, menacing at times and irresponsible, but loving and tender. I mean, he has, there's a scene where he has his kids in the back of the truck and he's like, here, have some beer. You can't, you want to yell at him for being an irresponsible parent, but his heart's kind of in the right place and it's kind of not. It's difficult, it's just difficult subject matter, and it can be really funny. And the actors talked about that. The black comedy is just like perfect. It's great. Like, there's not better writing out there. I mean, this is, and there are some assault topics touched on. This film, so I was looking at how it did at the Oscars, and you know what it ran into? It ran into this thing. It ran into The Godfather Part 2, okay? So there were all these nominees for director. I believe it ran into Roman Polanski in Chinatown, Truffaut in Day for Night, Bob Fosse and Lenny. Like, talk about a set of films to go up against. And, still to be that memorable. To be that memorable. It's just hard to watch. Like, I can only watch it every so often. I think I've watched it all the way through 3 times. And I want to watch it again, but again, it's a difficult film to process, but absolutely one of my favorites. Sometimes it'll be in my top 10, sometimes it won't be. Those are my thoughts. Tell me what you think. What's your favorite Cassavetes out of this list or any other? And if you liked the video today and found it to be helpful and want to give me a thumbs up, help grow the channel, I appreciate it. And subscribe if you haven't to Cody in the Cinema.